Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cocktails and Rocktails with me, your most notorious groupie, Alice Rouse, author of this little guy right here. These little books as well, where you can get that, all my merchandise down in that description. So go down, fiddle about, you guys. There's lots of good stuff, lots of funny stuff. You can't get anywhere else, so check it out. And you know what? We can't get anywhere else. The fucking awesome community here, the family we have, it's beyond community, seriously. Like, you guys are so fucking awesome. You rock. I love everybody just bonding down in the comments, and that we're just hanging out over music and leaving everything else behind, shutting the door and having a good time. Thank you guys for being such an amazing family. Truly, truly. It means the absolute world and everything to me here. So thank you so much, you guys. I just absolutely love you. Appreciate you every second of every day. And speaking of every second of every day, it's all rock and roll here. And you know what? I like to talk about other women in rock and roll. And there's another one who just recently, there's a documentary that just came out called Catchin' Fire, about Anita Pallenberg. Pretty fucking interesting little story happening there. So today we're going to talk about that. And because it's called Catchin' Fire, we're going to have a little local. Salt Flats, one of my favorite brew houses. They do different spirits. This is Bartender to Go. They're Tequila Sunrise, because ain't nothing catching fire like a tequila with me. You know, with tequila, you either go bad or you go really fucking friendly. I go the really friendly, like doing body shots off strange men in the bar in Vegas and spitting the lime to the bartender. Hoping the guys I made out with were at least 18. Yeah. That kind of friendly. They were. I'm just kidding. They were college kids, so they said. Anyway, they were. I'm just so kidding about that. They were 18. To check their IDs the next day. Anyway, let's have a little tequila sunrise. So kidding. I'm so kidding. All right, everybody, grab your tequilas or whatever else you want to grab. Kick up your feet, and let's have a little cocktails in someone else's rocktail. All right, cheers, big ears. Okay, all right, it's good. It's really good. I might add a little more grenadine before I pour it next time, but really nice, balanced flavor. Would I buy it again? Chase life to the limit. Enjoy the sunrise. Yeah, I might, for like a picnic or a hike or something, you know, something like that. To serve to my friend, like I said, I need to stay away from tequila. That's why white women bring, you know, like all kinds of strange animals home, because we're drinking damn tequila. That's why. Anyway, and that's just a joke. You guys know I'm not about anything. I don't judge people for nothing here, but okay. So let's start talking. Speaking about judging people, you know, this documentary, Catching Fire, just came out this year, 2024. I just happened across it on YouTube, and I'll put the link down in YouTube where you can watch it for free. It does have subtitles for Spanish and stuff like that. But like I said, it just happened to come across my YouTube. So I was like, ooh, what is this? A Catching Fire, Anita Pallenberg. Didn't even look at when it was released. But thought this is really interesting. You know, there was a book out a few years ago. But this kind of brought a whole different perspective in it, because you heard other people's voices. You heard her son. You heard Keith's voice, you know. And one of the things that I do have to say this up front that I really, really, really liked about this documentary was there was such a calm perspective about it. Like, didn't trash, you know, each other. Keith and Anita didn't. They were just so calm with each other. And it starts out, you know, and I think this might be, I've got to read the book about her, and she was called a witch, a slut, a murderer, hounded by the police, and slandered in the press. Wow. For a lot of people, that's going to be like so heavy, but for me, that motherfucking hit home. Because I've been there. I have been called, and to this day, I'm still called murderer, hooker, prostitute, druggie, things that I never was. And she says, they must have mistaken me for one of my characters. Just like I always feel I'm so pigeonholed because I was a stripper and a groupie. So the second I heard that, I was like, okay, this is going to be real. This is going to not be sugar-coated and not be a defamatory or blaming situation documentary. And it really did. It really came out and was totally, and when she's writing her book, because Marlon, her son with Keith, who really does look like his dad, but kind of has both his mom and dad's, like you can see his mom in a smile. You can see the coolness, that little extra something both Keith and Anita had that's really with Marlon and their daughter Angela as well. So it's really cool because Marlon, we'll get to Marlon because he had such a different role in their lives, that young kids have. But okay, when he said he found among her stuff the manuscript in this box, it was just right there because she was writing her biography and autobiography, and he found it and he was just like, oh wow, I didn't know she was doing this. And I'm so glad they took it not just to the book but to because she passed away in 2017, but they did this documentary as well. I just really, really think it was handled so beautifully. And when she said that, like I said, she's been called a witch, a slut, a murderer, hounded by the press, slandered. It just really hit home, and it just caught my interest because I'm like, wow, someone else who's been through this, can I learn stuff from her? And I think we all could, in good and bad ways from this documentary. And when she was writing her book, again, like I've been trying to get to this point, I know I go in circles sometimes, but she was reclaiming her soul. And I so get that because I wrote my book to tell my story, to reclaim my voice. And it really has kind of hit home at how I want to approach my second book, because my first book, obviously, I approached it with just sex, drugs, rock and roll. Here's a party. I'm going to tell you all about the party I had. It does address some things personally, but not really. It's kind of a read between the lines thing. So I was just kind of reclaiming my story, my adventure. Say hi, belugas. Everybody say hi to the kitten. He just came from the vet, healthy, happy, 17.1 pounds. But anyway, and I think it just really is going to help me approach my second book, is reclaiming my soul. Because I think by her doing that, she really was able to be more vulnerable with her story. She really was able to write in a very calm, conscious way. And I like that. And it really, is going to help me with my second book, I think. Because I have been struggling of how I want to write it and how I want to approach it. And I suck about really kind of sharing the pain in my life and very, very personal things. My feelings about different musicians, or, what I went through with the ex for 2.5 years where I wanted to unalive myself, But so I have a hard time, and it really taught me kind of how to use my voice the way she did when writing. So I love that about it. And she's kind of vague about her growing up. She was Italy. Her dad was a musician. Her grandfather was a famous painting. And I really think she kind of learned a lot from her mother, who was a nice, docile, traditional wife who never complained, just did everything, to keep the cohesion going. And I think Anita, not only was it a time where women were supposed to still be this, but I think Anita kind of took that from her mother and applied it to the situation she was in, because that's a huge situation to be in. So she kind of was born in Germany, lived in Italy, some Italian in her, somewhere else, and she had started kind of acting and modeling, and when she was 18, she takes off to New York, which love it. We used to do that back then, you guys. We used to turn 18 and necessarily didn't go to college or just start working. We might have worked for a couple of years in high school and save money to start a dream that most people wouldn't take the risk. So right out the gate, she was just independent, taking risks, taking control of her own life. She said she went to New York, was hanging out with the whole Warhol scene, was there when, was it Jack Kerouac or someone was collecting hair from down theirs? And she's like, he didn't take mine because I wasn't famous. I'm like, girl, I bet she wants it now. But anyway, so she was having a blast and was filming a movie somewhere, decided she wanted to go meet the Rolling Stones. She wanted to go backstage, and she was going to kidnap one of them. Like I always say, band nap. She had an agenda, and I love that because it shows the wonderful independence she had in a time when women were still objectified and pigeonholed and expected to be a certain type of woman. She wasn't going to be that. She took off, did this, went backstage to the Rolling Stone, offered Brian some, hashish stuffs, and he said yes, and she's like, oh, no kidnapping needed here then. And she just really found Brian's intelligence and his sophistication and his curiosity and they looked so much alike. There was just all these attractions in so many ways. And she would go on the film set. She had started working in films, had done the movie Barbarella, and everybody just loved them together. They were just amazing. But what they didn't know, what we all know, is Brian was very insecure. He needed Anita's calmness and her sweetness and her dedication and loyalty that she learned from her mother to kind of validate him as a man, and she kind of went through this twice with both of her relationships with the guys in the Rolling Stones, because when she moved in, she decided, she's like, I was done with New York. It was time to move to London. Her and Brian got this really great apartment, but it was not really decorated this much. Marianne Faithfull kind of came around at this time, started seeing Mick, but it was more of like people wanted to come party and feel the vibe. And Keith was spending a lot of time there because I think he just had this natural draw to Anita. He was fascinated with her because she was her own entity, because she walked in the room and people just stopped, and he just was so inclined to go there every day. I don't think it was because of Brian, even though he loved his bandmate. I think he was there at the apartment every day for Anita, and a lot of people were, and it was just chaos. And she's young, 20 years old, living the luxury that the Rolling Stones can buy at the time, and the hippie vibe and everybody congregating. And that's when she discovered the L and the S and the D and really liked it, and she decided to quit modeling and kind of let Brian take care of her, which I'm sure she had her own money saved away from modeling because she seemed that type. It doesn't really say. I always wonder about this era when the women moved in. Marianne Faithfull was making her own money. She was starting her own career, but were they as dependent on the rock stars as it seems? Because here she does quit modeling, and because she likes to do the trippins a lot, and you can't model and do that at the same time. It just doesn't work, not even in the 60s. So she kind of compromised herself for the first time with Brian. She said she never wanted to be the wife. And even Marlon, her son, was like, yeah, she wanted to be independent. She didn't care about the Rolling Stones. And Marianne Faithfull says it the best. Neither of them were dating them for their power because they had their own. Ladies, never lose your power. Never lose yourself over any man. Always keep yourself. Because this first time when Anita kind of started losing herself to Brian and the Rolling Stones is when I think she kind of, the acid was fun, but I think she kind of subconsciously, without really noticing it, started doing a little more drugs and stuff. because, oh, all these things pop up on my screen. Because I think she was kind of using it as an escape to, well, now I've really succumbed to the life that I don't want to. And Brian would get so jealous and tear up the scripts, but she went and did the movies anyway. Right? And there was one movie that she was in that, and movies kind of tended to be a very significant pivot in her life several times. Not just once, but, you know, Brian tried to stop her from doing movies. He'd rip up the script, but she went and did the movie anyway. And he came out and visited her some small town in Munich in Germany. You know, people were fascinated because her Rolling Stones boyfriend was there. And he somehow talked the director into letting him do the music for this movie. So it not only validated him, because he seemed to be really, really dependent on Anita's beauty and love and loyalty and kindness and sweetness to validate him as a man. You know, I don't know why a lot of people go through that, but Brian was one of them. And like I said, I think this was kind of the first tearing down of her subconscious and mentality, even though she stood strong. Like, he started being abusive to her and she fought back. She wasn't putting, it was a fight or flight, and she stayed and fought. Good for her, because she had that strength, that kind of strength. And everything would not be real easy with Brian, because he started kind of fading out while supposedly making the music. Anyway, so things kind of faded out. He was getting more into pills and stuff, getting more into the drugs. Small, kind of weak guy is how they all describe Brian in the movie. So, you know, and I think Keith was really, really her escape through all that, because when Brian was there making the movie, but he was succumbing to his drugs and not getting the music done for the movie that Anita was doing, Keith came in, saved his ass. And Keith seems to have done this several times for Brian, which I didn't realize how much Keith really kind of swooped in when it came to Brian, because he is kind of a caring guy. He's a sweet guy. You can see that in him. A little bit shy. So he came in, saved his ass, and when Keith was there, Brian would not be as abusive to Anita. So, let me see. I've got my notes. Sorry. And she quit modeling somewhat. Brian had bad trips. He was jealous of her acting. So, and there was one night that... Oh, hold on. Okay, sorry. I had to kind of stop, and my notes are all over the place. So, kind of had to stop and read them. So, after it was done, they all went back to the UK, and, you know, the big drug bust happened. So, Brian was seen taking something in front of a reporter, so that kind of had a domino effect. So they decided, Keith, Brian, Anita decided, you know what, we're just going to escape. We're getting out of here. You know, the big Marianne Faithfull candy bar, drug bust type of thing out at Keith's house. And I don't think I've ever heard Keith really talk about it before. So to hear him talking about it in this documentary is really cool, because you learn so much different things. But okay, I'm not going to tell the whole documentary because it is getting kind of tedious. But so anyway, they run off to Morocco. They decide they're going to go to Paris, get a car, and drive to Tangiers. So that's what they do. But Brian, because he had bad acid trips and stuff, he just became more aggressive, more, you know, violent and stuff. There was an incident in Paris, which Keith had to come. You know, they were fighting in the hotel room. Oh no, this one was Morocco. But I'm not sure what happened in Paris. And Brian had an overdose, and he was left to recover in Paris, and her and Keith kind of got together in Paris, and she was like, it was a total awakening, because first, there was this guy that was just affectionate, and it doesn't talk about if Keith, or if Brian was her first, whatever, or when she might have had her first. I think Brian was probably her first love. Was he her first between the sheets? Possibly. Because it doesn't really talk about anything like that before Brian. But yeah, it really goes into depth about what happened in Paris and how they kind of hooked up. Keith and Anita kind of hooked up one night, and then just sort of, when Brian went into the rehab to try and recover from the drugs and the problems, Keith and Anita just sort of took off. It was just sort of natural. They took off and went to Tangiers, and then when Brian rejoined them, and they were just kind of in their own little world. And I think it was really meant to be with Keith and Anita. How their story took the turns to get there is their story. I'm not judging them. I'm not perfect by any means. But yeah, so they got together, and Brian came down to Tangiers and went and found a couple of prostitutes. Brought him back to the hotel room. Like, what the fuck, bro? No. And he's like, Anita, why don't you join us? And oh, he ordered room service and started throwing food and plates and stuff at her. Oh, sorry, I'm getting pop-ups. But anyway, there was just a big fight, and that's when Keith was like, come on. Let's go. We're out of here. And he just basically saved her. And I think they just went back to London, and she's like, it really didn't get to the point of romantic till after we got back to London, even though that happened in Paris and stuff, and they were sleeping together. And here they were in Morocco, and there was Keith in her room having breakfast when one of their friends showed up, and they were all kind of like, whoa. But not whoa, you know? And I think that really kind of, they both felt bad about leaving Brian, but she said because of the drugs, because of his abusive behavior, she felt free finally. She felt a weight off of her shoulders, which anybody who's been in an abusive relationship, I have. I remember going down that long-ass driveway in my little just U-Haul. I'm like, I'm fucking out of here. I do not care. Best day of my fucking life. I didn't cry. I laughed. So I can understand the feeling and everything that, you know, she went through. And it was really great. But, you know, I think Keith kind of became, because she started acting again, you know, she and Keith were together. Oh, this is when they caught them in the hotel room. Was she went to Cannes for this movie that she had filmed, and it was a really great movie, and really kind of catapulted Anita's acting career. Not necessarily the biggest movie. She was, like I said, in Barbarella with Jane Fonda, which I love that movie. It's where Duran Duran got their name, you know. But I think Cannes really kind of showed her that was the pinnacle, because that was everything she worked for, and she was so happy to achieve it, and she felt so at home and so comfortable and just really happy with her accomplishment, which good for her, she should have been. But Keith ended up being like Brian, and a lot of English rockers at that time were. Anything that takes you away from me when it comes to their girlfriends, their groupies, their road wives, their home wives, everything like that, they don't want it. No, no, no. They want those traditional roles. My woman stays at home. We have kids. Do our thing. And, you know, Brian, I think, really kind of conditioned her subconsciously that that's the way, and her mom taught her how to handle it, but it wasn't like her goal in life. And Keith kind of started doing the same thing. And he knew, and there was an interview part where she went over to film another movie, Privilege, or started with a P. You guys will see, because like I said, I'll put the link to the first part down in the description, and you'll just watch it from there. Because Mick, and I think Mick very much, if he sees something he wants it, he's going to go get it. And I think he wanted Anita just as much. And I think he, you know, with Mick and Keith and like Robert Plant and Jimmy Page and, you know, maybe even James and Lars, there was always a competition when it came to not just the band. It's just this kind of yin and yang, but also came to women. And Mick definitely has that. So Mick got himself a part in this movie that Anita was filming. And they had to do a sex scene, between the sheets scene. So, of course, as you do when you're taking drugs and filming these scenes, something happened afterwards and they ended up in the scene for real. And it was just never talked about. And there's a scene in the movie where, you can tell that Keith already knows that Mick is over there and he's trying to go after his woman, and how dare my friend Keith do this. But English rockers have this thing, and we've learned this from like George Harrison and Eric Clapton and tons of others, that you know what, if you sleep with one of my English rock star friends, I can get over it. But if you sleep with an American one, hell and no. So it's this kind of unspoken thing among English rock stars. And it is definitely kind of a theme throughout the movie. And Keith is like, well, Mick's over there filming that, and I'm filming this. Because they ask him about, how do you feel about Mick being over there filming with your girlfriend? And you can see Keith get a little uncomfortable and a little hem and hawing, type of way. Because he knows. It's like women, we have that intuition. Men do too. When you're apart from your lover and your lead singer goes over to and puts himself into a situation with your girlfriend when he was not invited, and it made Anita very uncomfortable. But it was just kind of a one-off thing, and he did try to pursue her when Mick and Keith, and like I said, they never talked about it, and they just decided, well, we'll just go on a little vacation to South America together. We'll all get on a boat. Because, yeah, great place to get on a boat with the man, your lead singer, who just slept with your girlfriend, and now you're the lead singer's girlfriend. When Anita finds out she's pregnant with Marlon. So, and she's like, Mick's trying to get down the pants the whole time, but he knows she's pregnant. So it was kind of a half-assed thing. And that's why he wrote Can't Always Get What You Want, and Give Me Shelter was written by Keith because of her, because of this dynamic that she created in the band. And I don't mean in a bad way. It's just like, she was that person that when you're sitting in a room with a bunch of guys in the band and she walks in the room and there's just like a comfort and a relaxation to them. And she just knows everybody in the room and everybody's like, hey, happy to see her. She was that girl. And it just created this kind of flow among the band, and God love her for doing what she wanted, and no regrets, not looking back, and like she said, Keith never talked about it, Mick never talked about it. So what do? They go to Peru. Marianne, they get to South America and Brazil. Marianne's like, it's time for me to break up with Mick, just because it was time, and she was fascinated with Anita, because Anita and Keith were into their heroin years by this time. And Marianne wrote Sister Morphine, because Anita started taking morphine on the ship when she found out she was pregnant with Marlon, to get off the drugs. So, yeah, and while she was 7 months pregnant is when Brian Jones had the pool accident, passed away. And she says other things that really kind of hit home for me, that made sense. Because I'm not saying because, I'm so much like Anita Pallenberg, we're so much in common, we're like besties. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it because when you don't have anybody else that resonates with you in the things you've been through in your life, it's very isolating. And I felt less isolated because of her. Because of how she's like, I blamed myself for his death. I thought it was my fault because he had come to the premiere of this movie trying to get back to her with her in cons, and she was just like, no. And that's when everybody else realized that her and Keith were together. So it kind of happened after he realized they weren't getting back together. She had moved on with Keith. It was the real deal. They were both head over heels in love. So she kind of blamed herself. She kind of beat herself up about it for a lot of years. And I'm sure she did till the day she died, because I know I will. What if I didn't sleep through it? What if she had gotten back with Brian? I think strong women tend to blame themselves, or because we do take on, especially in rock and roll, you've got to take on so much more emotion that you don't realize exists. It's a very complicated world, and she tried to take Marlon out on the road, but just couldn't do it. And, they went back to France because they were living in France over taxes. They were kind of expat tax, because England does charge a lot on taxes. So to get away with not paying that much, which we should all pay our fair share, that's all. But rock stars move out of countries for tax havens. So they were living in France, again, get busted with drugs. The police were coming to get them for the heroin use and their children, because they had and so they take off to Switzerland, where I think that was the happiest that Anita ever really was, because it wasn't like about being in the Rolling Stones. Switzerland was like the only country that would have them, that was, because they were wanted by the police for the illegal use of heroin in France. That's what it was called. But I think the time in Switzerland where they had their second child, their daughter Angela, which they named Dandelion, and apparently Marlon's middle name, Sandeep something, Marlon, it says it in the movie, it means LSD. And when he asked Keith about it, Keith, in true cool ass fashion, was like, your mother had a sense of humor, didn't she? So, and I love this moment in the movie where they talk about their names, where Angela Richards and Marlon talk about the names, because she's like, oh yeah, why don't you ask my brother about his middle name? Huh? You can see that cute little sibling rivalry. But I think for the longest time, this time in Switzerland for them was really, really peaceful and amazing, until Keith went back on the road. Left her again, like he had with Marlon, tiny small children, by herself, a few-month-old baby, which I think really got to her, because yeah, you're a single mom basically when your husband's out on the road and he's got a heroin problem and he comes back and he's sleeping all the time. And I think that's when the tension kind of started again, because the house in France, like, she was hoping it was quiet. She had Marlon, this new baby, and here is Keith going, hey everybody, let's record, Exile on Main Street in this whole house. So it becomes a rock and roll circus where she's cooking and making meals for 30, 40 people every goddamn day, every meal, trying to be a mom. And poor Marlon is like, by the time they get to Switzerland, he's just a grown-up kid to them. I mean, and I'm telling the whole story. I'm probably, like I said, I was trying not to be redundant with the story and going back and forth, but it just really, really was one of the best documentaries I've seen about music in any way, shape, or form in a long time. It's just simple. It's relaxed. It's so easy. And it told me so many things I didn't know about them. That you knew, but you didn't know all at the same time. But then, like I said, I think when Keith went on tour, it broke their little bubble. And kind of, I think Anita was, and rightfully so, because, the drugs, everything was very kind of mentally unstable, and, oh, excuse me. Well, it makes you burp, that's for sure. Anyway, so when Keith came back and they finally had peace and silence in Switzerland, and he comes back from tour and he's just hiding how much heroin he's doing. He's kind of sleeping all day. She's still the same single mom, even with her husband and father of her kids home. And yet they fell pregnant with a third child, which I don't know why I didn't know this. I guess because I just don't read rock autobiographies, because I've been around it so much that it's just kind of like it's just, we kind of read to escape our lives, not to delve deeper into it. So kind of read to escape mine, and that is a part of my life. But then they had Tara, their third child, who sadly passed away because he was premature and he died of SIDS. And I think that really totally broke Anita in ways that it took her a lot of years to recover from, if she ever did fully recover. And this whole documentary goes into more and more and more. Like I said, I really love Angela in it. I really love Marlon and hearing Keith talk about it and their friends, it just really portrays who I think Anita was through all this insane chaos of, the Rolling Stones when they were first happening, when, being with Brian, and then the complications of Keith, and then one night stand with Mick, and, all these complications, chaos, everything. Anita kind of kept this calmness, but I think the calmness broke when her child passed away, and I think that kind of created a domino effect, and that she was in denial for a long, long time. And I found it kind of, the dynamic kind of crazy, because they sent Angela to live with Keith's mother and father because everything that was going on in the house, but they considered Marlon at 10 years old an adult, 7, 8 years old, an adult, and he could handle it. And one of the things Marlon, because Anita, after when they had moved to New York, and you'll watch this whole documentary, because like I said, it's a really good one. I really, really enjoy it. As you can tell, I'm all excited like a little kid. And I don't get excited over rock dogs, because it's like, been there, or motherfucker stole that from me, But when they were in New York, she had an affair with these two guys who came and did, handyman work or landscaping and stuff. And Marlon was in school and had come home. He says he's in school, come home, just watching this, made a sandwich, watching a documentary on the moon walk, whatever, and all of a sudden here's this explosion. And he runs upstairs and he sees Anita freaking out, because her lover, one of these boys that she had made her lover, they were watching the Deer Hunter, where there's a scene where he plays roulette with the pew-pew, where you put one little thing in it and you just spin it and kind of see what happens. And well, didn't work out very well for the boyfriend Scott. And Marlon, he's like, I was so used to it at the time that I just looked around the room. My first instinct was to look around the room and clean stuff up if there's any paraphernalia. And I'm like, dude, been there. I totally get that. So it really kind of made me feel at home among the Rock family. Not that like I'm some hierarchy. That's not it at all. There were just similarities that I identified with. And I'm like, holy shit, this is kind of par for the course sometimes for some people living the rock and roll family lifestyle. So I was just like, God, that poor kid being that age and knowing the first thing you got to do around that room is get rid of stuff. Like I did. Got to make sure there's nothing on top of that TV stand that you have to huff and puff and blow like, Little Red Riding Hood. So, and that kind of made me cry for Marlon, because he just seems like such a well-adjusted, intelligent, calm, peaceful adult with everything he went through. And I think that does kind of both of his parents. But watch the whole documentary. I think I'm kind of babbling a little too much about it. And tell me what you guys know, what you guys think. If you've watched it, tell me down in those comments what you guys think about it, how you feel about it. It just, her story to me, like, I knew so much of it, but then there was just so much I didn't know. And so much that kind of gave me hope, because when you are someone that is part of scandal in rock and roll, especially a woman that's part of scandal, you tend to get pigeonholed. You tend to get under the thumb, so to speak, under my thumb. And she was definitely under the thumb of the Rolling Stones. But to hear her own words throughout this whole documentary was just really cool, because I finally got to see her for the whole Anita Pallenberg, not just the chick from who was the extra member of the Rolling Stones. She definitely was. And she was a true muse. Unlike Mick's lover from LA for like 5 minutes. Anyway, so yeah, really great documentary, you guys. I'm going to just kind of wrap it up here. Sorry for the babble, kind of going back and forth, kind of going, but it just, like I said, it was a really good documentary. Catching the Fire, go check it out, you guys. Absolutely cool. Love hearing it. And there's, like I said, there's another book, I can't remember the name, Rainbow Girl or something like that, that I want to read, that's about her, that came out in 2020, I believe. So they're all relatively new. And unlike John's book, The Ox, she had a lot more in her manuscript that Marlon and the kids found when she had passed away, which is, I'm so glad that they did this, and they did it with her real true words, and they really did it with care. Like I said, unlike the Ox book, which was really slapdash and kind of egotistical and controlled by the first ex-wife, and the author didn't even bother like finding out facts. Like you can tell that they love the love that was put into this book as to the ego that was put into the Ox book. You know, I think that a lot of ego from Steve Luongo, from Paul Reese, from the first ex-wife, not the second one, Maxine, you cool. You're genuine. I love that. But, you know, so I really, really like the genuineness of this documentary. So go check it out, guys. And I hope you guys liked me babbling about it today. And I hope it intrigues you to go check it out. And thank you so much to everybody who's made it to the end of this video with me. You guys rock. I absolutely love that you think anything I have to say has any interest at all. So it truly means the world to me. You guys give me so much, you know, confidence and stuff that I lost along the way when I was going through my shit. So thank you for that. It's absolutely immeasurable to say thank you enough, and absolutely priceless. So, and for those of you guys just lurking around, being kind of ghosty on the channel, just checking it out, just hit that subscribe. Come join the family, because I have a badass family here. So fortunate that we were able to build with so many cool stuff and so many cool people just gathering and talking about the music and their favorite bands. And I love it. You guys, every single one of you rock. Everybody watching the channel, just enjoying it. People just hanging out, being anonymous. Thank you so much. Every one of my subscribers, every one of my members, everybody just hanging out, just lurking. Absolutely appreciate you guys. So hit the subscribe button, hit that share, become a member, and hit my bells. And we'll see you next time on Cocktails and Rocktails. Cheers, big ears.